first review I ever made on this channel was for Carrie Fletcher's On the Other Side. I've just had my channel's first birthday, so it makes sense that the first review I post is of Carrie Fletcher's All That She Can See, which is a book which follows the main character, Cherry, who can see creatures. And these creatures aren't just any old creatures. These creatures are physical manifestations of our feelings. So she sees loneliness and guilt and sadness and all of our bad feelings. She can see them. To combat this, Cherry bakes goods, and as she bakes them, she puts all of her good feelings into them, and she opens bakeries around England and tries to help people to cheer up and sort of not exactly get over their feelings, but to help them heal. And it was such a cool, interesting concept, especially when Chase comes along, who is not exactly a villain or anything like that, but Chase can see all the good feelings, but he sees happiness and love and all the rest of it, but he hasn't had a lot of that in his life, so it's made him quite bitter. And it was so interesting to see these two characters mix and how they sort of came together and sort of helped each other out. And all of this, it was so interesting. And I would say it's kind of like the adult version of Inside Out, because it tackles some really quite hard-hitting topics like loneliness and guilt and sadness and stuff like that. It was dealing with all stuff like that, but in a slightly more adult way, which was really interesting to read. I'm a big fan of Inside Out. I've only managed to watch it twice because I cry so hard, but I absolutely love it. And this book was sort of like the adult version of it. And in some places, it was a hell of a lot darker. It was a lot more positive in places, but it was a hell of a lot darker, especially in the book, when you find out that there is actually a company called The Guild, which deal with people who can see emotions, and they try and take away all the people who can see the creatures' emotions, so they don't feel anything. They don't feel guilt or happiness or sadness or anything, and they try to separate them from the creatures that are following them around. And it's so interesting and such a cool concept, and it was so dark in places. Like, the whole bit with the guild was so dark. I couldn't believe how dark it was, because everybody on YouTube knows Carrie Fletcher. She's such a happy person, and she's always about positivity and stuff. I didn't expect this kind of darkness from her, and it was so well done. I was so invested and really quite scared of the guild, if I'm completely honest. The guild was so scary in places, because they're trying to take away people's emotions, and they've just become an organisation for evil. And the things they do, I won't actually say the kind of things they do to different characters, because that would be spoilers, but the things they do are really scary. And it was all still working as a brilliant metaphor for emotions and trying to deal with emotions, and how we as a society deal with them, because we just bury them, but instead of talking about them and trying to help ourselves. And it was such a cool little metaphor written into this book the whole way through. I was so invested in it. I was completely and utterly in love with the concept and the storyline the whole way through. It was so interesting and so well done, and Carrie's personality again shined through this book so well. Especially On the Other Side, you could see Carrie's positivity and her way of being herself just shone through in this book, and it was so good. And actually, it was really surprisingly diverse as well, because Cherry is actually a woman of colour, which was very interesting. And because you don't see that many female characters who are POC as the main character in a book, as well as you don't see them as a love interest either. But Cherry is very much the love interest of Chase, which was so interesting and so different. And also, Cherry was raised by two dads, and it wasn't forced or anything. It just was, and I really enjoyed that about this book as well. It was effortlessly diverse, I would say, because even though diverse characters were in there, and you had different people from different backgrounds, and people who were gay or they were POC or things like this, it wasn't forced in any way, which I really liked, because sometimes I can feel like characters can be POC, or they're not straight, or they're they're transgender or anything like that, and it's kind of forced. But in this, it just was sort of it was just sort of put in there, and it made sense in the storyline. And while it didn't, like, while her Cherry being POC or her parents being gay or anything like that wasn't anything to do with the storyline, it was still interesting to see it weaved in so well and so subtly, but it sort of really made it normal in a way, which was really nice to read, actually. And all of these characters and everything weaved together so well. I absolutely loved it. There was so many interesting characters, and there was actually one character in there who I really liked, who was actually a social media expert who I really enjoyed. I'm trying to set up a business to do with social media running and things like this, so it was really interesting to see a character like me in a book. It was very interesting, and it was awesome. I loved that bit. And I just generally loved this book. I did really enjoy the book. I loved the juxtaposition from Cherry and Chase. I loved everything to do with the guild, and I really hope there's a sequel to do with Cherry and Chase and the guild, because that'd be really interesting. I loved all the creativity with all of the creatures and how they manifested themselves and how each one of them was different, and all of the different recipes in here as well. There was so much talk of food, it made me hungry, and I actually had to stop at one point reading so I can go down the road and get cookies, because I was like, I can't read this anymore without food on me, because it just made me really hungry, because everything is about cake in this book and cookies and pie and things like this. But it was all the way through, it was all about cakes and pies and cookies and food, which made me really hungry. So if you do read this book, bring snacks, I would say. But it was such an interesting and fun read. And the only thing I would say would be that I wished sort of maybe Chase had brought Cherry more to the dark side and maybe made her a bit bitter or something like that. But at the same time, I can see why that didn't happen. And I actually, even though it didn't happen, I really actually enjoyed their relationship, because their relationship wasn't the main part of the story. The story did still focus on the guild and Cherry trying to save Chase and everybody else from the guild, and Cherry really stood out to me as a character, actually. Cherry really stood out, because Cherry was completely in charge of her own destiny. She was completely and utterly, ready to get up and fight and do whatever she had to do to save herself and save her friends and everything else. She was totally in charge and didn't need no man to save her, which I love it when that happens, and especially considering her romance with Chase wasn't the main part of the storyline and nothing fell to the wayside because she was in love with Chase. Things just sort of carried on and they were in love with each other, but it wasn't the main focus of the book. It was something I really enjoyed as well, because I hate it when romances completely take over a storyline, but in this one they didn't, which was really fun. And I just generally really enjoyed this book. It was incredibly diverse. It was it was very subtly diverse, but I think I described it on Twitter as subtly diverse but effortlessly written, and I do stand by that now after I've actually finished the whole thing. It was so excellently written, and the metaphor worked through it perfectly, and the message in this book was done brilliantly. It reminded me a lot of Inside Out, but it wasn't in your face so much with how we deal with emotions, but it was an underlying theme the whole way through. And I loved Cherry, I loved Chase, I really identified with Chase as well, which was quite nice. I probably shouldn't have, but I did. That's just me though, I'm quite bitter and twisted, but that's just me. But I really enjoyed this book, and I really hope there's a sequel. I don't know if there's going to be a sequel, I really hope there is, because Chase and Cherry's adventures and how they try and get past the guild and everything deserves more of a story, because it left it, if this book is the only book in this world, I'll be fine, but because it rounded off quite well, but at the same time, I'd really like a sequel, just to see exactly how Cherry and Chase get on, and what happens with the guild and everything else. I'll be really interested to see that. I don't know if there's a sequel. I'll be over the moon if there is, though. But essentially, if there isn't, I still really love this book. I love the creativity of it. I love the message of it. The characters were really well done. It was written really well. I loved the messages in it. I loved I just loved it. I really did enjoy this book, and that's just proven by the fact that I did read it in a day, which I haven't done in a very long time. It was a very good book, and I would highly recommend it to everybody. And if you've read this book, please tell me what you thought of it down in the comments, or if you're planning on reading it, please tell me that down in the comments. And if you like this video, please do give me a thumbs up, and if you want to see any more of my videos where I'm going to be reviewing books and doing tags and everything else, please click here. And if you want to see my review of On the Other Side, please click here. That'd be great. But until next time, guys, bye.